Hello? Oh, there we go. We can talk about naps next time. But today we'll talk about my first favorite topic. We'll talk about plants and water. So welcome everyone to the 5th year of Love Your Alley. Tonight's talk is Let's Turn Water Problems into Water Solutions with Chris Anderson and Madison Wisniewski. Thank you so much. I meant to ask you before we started, but napping, so. Okay. So Love Your Alley has a bit of a twist this year. Love Your Alley 2025 is the Bexley Habitat Triangle edition. Has anybody heard about the Bexley Habitat Triangle yet? Oh, some of you have. Okay, well, I'll tell everybody else. So because of our community efforts over the past 5 years restoring habitat, Green Bexley's Love Your Alley was able to secure a sizable grant from Village and Wilderness to restore land on 28 connected properties in South Bexley to create one large habitat for birds, bees, and butterflies. And it's in the southwest quadrant of our city. And education actually is tailored for the Bexley Habitat Triangle residents who asked for specific topics to be covered, and water solutions was one of the topics that was asked for. Village and Wilderness is asking us, the funders are asking us to attempt to create a model that's replicable in other cities, and we've partnered with Worthington to hopefully bring the initiative to Worthington after Bexley. So what have we done so far? With great help from residents, Love Your Alley committee members, and native landscapers, this winter we removed invasive honeysuckle from 17 yards. Last weekend, with landscapers, residents, committee members, and volunteers, we began site prep on the triangle. And all throughout May, with the help of student volunteers, packs, and troops, the gardens will be installed starting May 9th through, I believe, May 28th. We'll work on 28 gardens. And we'll be installing perennials, we'll be installing trees and shrubs. But we're not forgetting about the rest of the Bexley community. So we also have free native plants and shrubs for everybody else, so don't despair. This is all thanks to generous grants from the Bexley Community Foundation and Franklin Soil and Water Conservation District. And on Sunday, May 4th, from 10 to 2, or until we run out, you can stop by my driveway. I'm at 2576 Bryden Road, and pick up your free native plants. Everyone is welcome to 10 plants plus a shrub until supplies last. I also want to let you know that our next Love Your Alley talk will take place on Wednesday, May 14th, also at the Bexley Public Library. That will be with Josh Zing from Edge Effect. He will be offering a talk called Natives 101, What, Where, When, Why, and How. That will be our last talk of the season. And I also want to make sure you all know about a mosquito study that's happening. We did a mosquito study in 2022, and because of our efforts, we were able to secure a very large USDA grant. The first study was done just in Bexley, and then we secured a $750,000 grant to expand the study to Central Ohio so we can gather more information, and we're looking for ways to reduce and control our mosquito populations while also protecting our beneficial insects. So the study involves traps, and we have houses in Hilliard, Bexley, Grandview, Upper Arlington, and Worthington. And we're still maybe looking for a few more houses, ideally by the Bexley Natural Market, as far west in Bexley as we can get. Oh, someone's mouth just opened. If you have an idea, please talk with me after. I almost said after the show, but this is not a show. Okay. So if you have any ideas, please let me know. We're also looking for participants in Upper Arlington and Hilliard. I want to give a huge thank you to the Love Your Alley committee, who started working on Love Your Alley 2025 over a year ago. So please raise your hand or stand up or do a little dance or something to show people who you are. Liz, I see you. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Joe, did you raise your hand? I don't know if you... Okay, good. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for all your work. I also want to give a very big thank you to Village and Wilderness, the Bexley Community Foundation, Franklin Soil and Water for their generous grants, and to the Edge Effect, the City of Bexley, Catch the Water for their in-kind donations. So let's introduce our speakers tonight. We have Chris Anderson. He's been gardening since 1994 and practicing permaculture since 1996. Chris celebrates native plants and their interconnections with people and nature, including the Polyphemus moth caterpillars he raises. While in northern Arizona, Chris won awards including the Norman B. Herkanham Award, thank you, for educating citizens about utilizing native plants in landscapes. Chris's company, Catch the Water, co-creates rain gardens, native plant gardens, and permaculture gardens with people who enjoy connection and love to learn. Chris also offers celebratory tree and garden planting events for special occasions like birthdays and graduation parties. We have a lot of graduation parties coming up, so keep it in mind. What's better than planting a tree, and a native tree? And now for Madison. As the conservation implementation specialist, Madison Wisniewski works with residents, local partners, and other Franklin County entities to implement various conservation practices across the county. As a certified master rain gardener, she focuses on assisting residents and communities with installing rain gardens and other stormwater management tools to better improve water quality. Madison graduated from Ohio University in 2018 with a BS in environmental geography. And Madison's gonna kick it off for us tonight.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca. I like that you started to say the Ohio University, and then you remembered there's no the. I was going to just step up here, but I thought I better take the stairs so I don't fall down. Okay, so thank you, everyone. I'm Madison Wisniewski, Conservation Implementation Specialist with Franklin Soil and Water. Just by a show of hands, who is familiar with Franklin Soil and Water? Okay, like maybe more than half. That's pretty good. So we are a county agency. So we do service all of Franklin County, but we do have municipal partners such as Bexley that we work with. So you might see us at various events throughout the county, but we do hang out with our friends in Bexley quite often. So today, I'm going to be talking about resources that our office provides to Bexley residents, specifically about water management in your own yards. So I just want to start off by talking about the benefits of reducing stormwater runoff and pollution, because sometimes we only think of the benefit as, okay, this water is not in my yard anymore. That's a great benefit to me. But there are a lot of reasons why we should try to reduce stormwater runoff and reduce pollution in that stormwater. So we want to protect water quality, right? So our local streams and rivers are the sources for our drinking water, our potable water. So it's very important that all that water that enters our streams and rivers from our storm sewer systems is clean. We want to reduce localized flooding during heavy rainfall. I'm sure you all know Bexley is kind of an older city, so you guys have older storm sewer systems in place, and I'm sure a lot of you experience soggy backyards in the spring and the fall, which is why you're probably all here today. So Chris will be diving into solutions for that a little bit later. We want to improve our regional resiliency to weather and rainfall variances. So, as our climate's changing, we're seeing heavier rainfall, more rainfall. And we want to build resilient communities as we progress to the future. We also want to save everyone money on costly water treatment and environmental remediation. So when we get very heavy storms and they take out a bridge, or you see flooding like that, that costs a lot of money, so we try to work to prevent that. So we can reduce stormwater runoff in our own yards by using these simple backyard conservation practices. So a lot of what I'm talking about today relates to our Community Backyards program. Another show of hands, who has taken our Community Backyards program before? Okay, not so many. That's great. So I'm going to dive into that a little bit and tell you more about it. So these are kind of the topics that we talk about. And again, Chris is going to do a deeper dive into it. So first, I'll start off with rain barrels. So rain barrels are a great, pretty cheap, easy tool that you can implement easily in your yard to capture stormwater. So I get asked this a lot. The facts are rain barrels are legal and encouraged in Ohio. So states like Arizona, managing stormwater on your own property is not permitted. That water belongs to the state. Whereas here we have an abundance of water and we try to actually reduce as much water going to our systems as possible. So HOAs cannot outright ban them, but they can put restrictions on size or color. And then if you follow our basic tips, they are not mosquito havens. It is possible to get mosquitoes, but there are some ways to remediate that. But really, if you're using it correctly, it should not be a problem. And rainwater is not safe for consumption, bathing, cooking, or drinking. So keep that in mind. So how much water is actually saved through rain barrels? So if you use one 50-gallon rain barrel for 6 months out of the year, using the full amount once per week, so 50 gallons times 6 months, because we don't use rain barrels in the winter, that equals about 1,300 gallons saved. So if only half of Franklin County households did this, we would be reducing stormwater runoff by 340 million gallons every year. So that is quite significant. And some people have multiple rain barrels on their house. You can have one for each downspout or multiple per downspout. The possibilities are endless. So you can really take a lot of water from reaching your...
So this graphic is kind of to demonstrate how they work.
I don't know what that was. So here's how they work. Here you can see this nice diagram of the house. So basically your downspout typically will run straight to the storm sewer system, or it might just outlet at the base of your house with a little bit of an extender. So you would be intercepting that water from reaching the storm sewer or from emptying out into your backyard.
So this
So using your rain barrel, we encourage you to use it to water your flower beds. You can do that via a watering can, a garden hose, a soaker hose. We do not recommend using it for any kind of edible plants just because of the materials that come off your roof. Doesn't make for good water. I installed a rain barrel last year, and with the drought, I was surprised by how much water I actually had available to me throughout the year. Even just a little bit of a, sorry about that. Even with just a little bit of a rain event, it can really fill up. So rain gardens, this is what Chris is going to talk about a lot, is rain gardens. So these come in various shapes and sizes, as you can see. They can be residential scale, they can be larger, which is what we would call a bioretention cell. They can be neat or they can be wild. It just kind of depends on your aesthetic and your goals. So these are bowl-shaped gardens used to capture and filter stormwater. They sit about 3 to 6 inches below the level of the ground, and then we fill them with native plants, water-tolerant plants that help soak up that water, filter out pollutants. So if you have a wet spot in your yard, sometimes a rain garden can be a solution for that. A low spot, sometimes rain gardens can be a good fit. So some local studies conducted on active rain gardens. So in Brook Run, I was just there today. Back about 15 years ago, we did a project where 21 rain gardens were installed. And through monitoring with OSU, they saw about a little more than 80% reduction in stormwater entering a nearby stream. So that is pretty significant with a neighborhood of maybe like 40 homes. To have 21 rain gardens doing that much work is pretty incredible. So, and then Blueprint Columbus, which you may or may not be familiar with, those rain gardens over in Clintonville and beyond now, those have been studied recently, and they saw a reduction of 24% total nitrogen and 47% total phosphorus, and then a reduction of 67% total suspended solids. So that is your sediment, garbage, stuff like that from entering nearby streams. So they are really effective in managing stormwater and stormwater pollutants. Native plants, so this is what Rebecca is all about. She's telling you to plant native plants. She has literally hundreds of plants at her home for free. Come pick them up. So these are plants that are indigenous to this area. They are beneficial to wildlife and pollinators. They've been evolving, co-evolving in our ecosystems for hundreds, thousands of years. So they're very resilient, and they're very important for our ecosystems. So here's a nice diagram showing you the extensive root systems of native plants versus your regular lawn turf grass here with its short roots. So it's not really doing much to absorb water. So if you have water problems and you only have grass in your backyard, that might be why. Grass is really good at just conveying water. It's not so good at soaking up water. So by replacing part of your yard with native plants, especially if you have a low spot or a wet spot, that'll help significantly. So here's just some examples. Again, I just mentioned that they've been co-evolving with our pollinators, our native bees, butterflies, for hundreds or thousands of years. So a lot of our local insects need specific native plants to reproduce, to feed on, so that's why they're so important, not to mention their root systems, their benefits to soil and water quality. They're just amazing. So they come in all different shapes, sizes, and colors. Perennials get a lot of love, but our native shrubs are also amazing. They can provide a lot of habitat for pollinators as well. You can see the viburnum there in full bloom. Again, very important for our wildlife. And then trees. Sometimes trees get left out of the equation, but trees are so important. Trees can be beneficial to pollinators, wildlife, not to mention, reducing the urban heat island effect, things like that. The list goes on. So, for example, the white oak can host up to 400 species of Lepidoptera, so that is your butterflies and moths. So trees can be just as important to our pollinators as flowering perennial plants. I want to touch on invasive plants, and every time I have this slide, I like to preface it by saying, you don't need to tell me if you have these in your yard, because I always have people say, oh no, I have that in my yard. You don't have to, I'm not calling anybody out here, I'm just making you all aware. We do have invasive plants. A lot of these you might look at and think, sell these at garden centers. Are you telling me garden centers would sell invasive plants? Unfortunately, yes. They are readily available, which is what makes them such a nuisance. A lot of people buy them and plant them, and they do escape their cultivation. So the Bradford pear, Callery pear, I'm sure you're all aware of it. It's hard to miss in the springtime with its white blooms all over the place. So we encourage you, if you have them in your yard, to remove them, replace them with natives. We're not the police. We're not going to come out and make sure you do that, but we do like to educate. So in the US alone, invasive species cause about $34 billion in ecological harm every year. So, just the degradation of our natural ecosystems and how important those are to us and everything else, they're really, really harmful. So here's a great resource if you're looking for native plants to buy, you're not really sure what to buy. This Audubon native plant database, here's the website for that. You go in and you put in your zip code, and it will give you a bunch of different filters you can use, and it'll tell you what birds it attracts and things like that. So it's really helpful if you don't know where to start, but you're excited about incorporating native plants into your yard. So here's some local vendors. Franklin County has some really great, or Central Ohio has some really great native plant-specific nurseries. So Leaves for Wildlife, Scioto Gardens, Native in Harmony, those are all really good, kind of larger scale, native-specific nurseries. You can find natives at some of our other local garden centers here. We do a pop-up sale, which I'll talk about shortly. And then we've got some other smaller ones like City Folks and Sunny Glen Garden, which are amazing. Composting and stormwater, so more carbon and organic matter in our soil means more water retained on site, which reduces runoff. So really having good soils, healthy soils can help reduce stormwater runoff. So organic matter is 40% carbon. 1 pound of carbon can retain up to 40 pounds of water. So. And I believe Bexley does have a compost system. So you guys hopefully are already composting. You've got that up and running. But there are over 20 food waste drop sites in Franklin County now. So here I'll just touch on some soil and water specific programs that are available to you guys before I turn it over to Chris here. So Community Backyards, that's the program I mentioned at the beginning. So this is free workshops that we provide to residents of Franklin County. Once you take a workshop, you get a rebate for native plants, a rain barrel, compost bin, or rain garden. And the rain garden rebates are up to $250. The rain barrel's $50, native plants $50, and then you can purchase a compost bin there. So this is a great program. You can do it year after year. So if you're looking to establish your pollinator garden, you can go buy those native plants. You get $50 just for taking one of our workshops, and then you can do it year after year. So you can really get your pollinator garden up and running. So that workshop is scheduled for Sunday, June 15th, 1 to 2:30 at the Bexley City Hall. So definitely mark your calendars for that. Also want to mention we do have a business grant that Rebecca mentioned. So that's up to $2,500 for green infrastructure projects. And we did award one to Green Bexley in 2025. We also do education and outreach programs. So we will be attending 2 Bexley community events in 2025. I believe we already did one. I can't remember what the other one is. So if you see us around, come say hi. We will do education programs for at least 300 Bexley students. So there's a chance we are already in the schools educating students. The Master Rain Gardener program is a program that I run, so it's a 5-week course that teaches you how to design, install, and maintain a residential rain garden. So registration is open for that. If you're interested, that starts June 10th, so feel free to see me after this if you have questions. We do have a volunteer program, so we do events throughout the county all year long. And then I think last we have the annual tree and plant sales, so that did close already for the year, but every year we do a native tree and plant sale where we do wholesale pricing for bare root native trees and shrubs, and then we also have native plants that we sell at about $3 a piece through that. Here's some other grants. I don't know if I'll really get into them. We have various grants for county-specific, business-specific. We've got a lot. So definitely check out our website if you are interested in any of those. So with that, I will open it up to questions. Anyone have questions before I turn it over to Chris? Yes.
This was great. Many of your slides caused me to think of questions, but unfortunately at my age, I've got the memory of a goldfish. Will this be on your website?
This is not on our website. So some of these slides I did take from the Community Backyards workshop. So we do offer both online and in-person workshops. So if you're interested in just doing the online workshop, it's basically these slides, but it goes way more into depth. So you could do that. But you could also, if you want to grab my card after this, if you remember those questions later and you want to ask, feel free. Yeah, great question. So you do have to disconnect them and either store them away or just like turn the lid upside down. I left mine out all year, not connected, but left it out, and it was fine. It didn't crack or anything. But yeah, you just have to disconnect them. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah.
I have a rain barrel that I got from a neighbor. I was just putting out in my yard. And I did take a class a number of years ago, probably a decade, about rain barrels, but I don't know like the nitty-gritty how to install it. Is it very complicated to reroute your rain gutters?
No, so the question is installing a rain garden or a rain barrel difficult? So we have these diverter kits. They come with the drill bit that you need to drill the hole in your downspout. They come with the connector tube, and the diverter kits are not specific to the. To my knowledge, are not specific to the rain barrels that we encourage you to buy. So they can go with a multitude of rain barrels. But yeah, it comes with everything you might need, including, like I said, the drill bit, which is very nice, very handy, and then the instructions, and yeah. Yep, yep. I did it, and I am pretty unhandy, so. It's pretty exciting when it's been really dry and you still have water and you can go water your newly planted pollinator plants, and yeah.
So I'll just share a response to that too. So rain barrels are simple enough that any homeowner can do them. Most handymen can look at the directions and do it pretty easily too. I do install rain barrels if you want help beyond those resources. City Folks Farm Shop has a great, they're the same model that she's talking about. It's really good. One of the things I like about that not all rain barrels have, is that they're pretty good at keeping out sunlight and mosquitoes. Both two very important, simple things.
Any other questions? Yes. So I think the question was, where do you get the diverter kit? I believe there's a link on our website. So if you go to communitybackyards.org, we have an enormous amount of resources on there for everything you might need. And I think that diverter kit can be purchased separately, and it's, I want to say $30. I'm not entirely sure, but any other questions? Okay. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I noticed something in your presentation that recommended emptying a rain barrel every week.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we do recommend, if you haven't emptied your rain barrel in a week and there hasn't been any new rain, to empty it completely. Otherwise, there is the potential that mosquitoes could lay eggs in there. So mosquitoes need a full week to lay their eggs and hatch. So if you're emptying it out once a week, then you reduce the risk of mosquitoes breeding in your rain barrel. But if it's installed correctly, you shouldn't really get mosquitoes anyways. But it's just an extra precaution. Yes.
Instead of draining it every week, could you just put a mosquito dunk in it as well?
Yes, so you could use a mosquito dunk, and we really only recommend those if you're seeing larvae in there. You don't need to use that unless you suspect that there might be mosquito larvae in there. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that, I will turn it. Oh, one more. Yes, so that's what I was saying is if they're installed correctly and you have a good system, you should have no problem with mosquitoes. But it's when you may have forgotten something, or, sometimes you just miss something and they can get in. So. Okay, well, thank you all. I appreciate it. And I will turn it over to Chris.
Okay. Just really grateful for Madison and her presence in our community. She's a great resource here in town, and Franklin Soil and Water is fantastic. I've worked with many different soil and water conservation districts over 30 years in the gardening and landscaping and garden center career, I guess you would say. And Franklin Soil and Water just blows all the others away. Most soil and water conservation districts have like 2 or 3 employees. Franklin Soil and Water is stacked with incredible people. So, great resource.
I need to verify that we're all allowed to see this.
Okay. I'm not sure if I can stand still at a lectern. I might have to walk around.
That's fine too.
Okay.
Have something that like scans all over you so that
Looks great.
okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Jay. All right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Chris Anderson. I'm with Catch the Water, a local company here, doing our best to educate and to share how to work with water in the landscape and why native plants are important for the landscape and how the two combined kind of like get the ball rolling in a faster way. So we're going to talk about turning water problems into water solutions for the purpose of habitat and water management. And let's see. So I'll mention a little bit about this slide first because this is a rare thing, right? How many of us have a very big backyard that's just gigantic? This one in particular is one of those houses in a neighborhood where everybody else's water drains there, okay? So because of the way houses are developed in cities and in rural areas and suburban areas, we often run into situations like this. This particular place is in Reynoldsburg. This was every winter, it was a super big puddle that would take about a month or more to infiltrate into the ground. So we couldn't think of it like a rain garden. We had to think of it more like a wetland here and rain garden up here. So we do have problems in landscapes that create solutions. Let's see. So water, of course, is a resource. Water is life. Water, every living creature on this planet requires water, and we have a responsibility, I believe, to take care of water where we live. Because what we do with our water here impacts everybody downstream. And both quality and quantity are important in that. So water problems tend to start high in the landscape, right? So when water hits a roof, it has to go somewhere. It's gonna go down. Water's gonna seek its own level, it's gonna go down. So if our landscape is shaped in such a way where water that hits it pulls soil, pull organic matter with it. So it's not just water that leaves the landscape, but it's also fertility. Then, of course, we run into situations like this, where nobody wants their car to get moved by a flood, and nobody wants their patio table to be covered up by water. So this is an alternative approach. So by catching, storing, and utilizing that energy as high in the landscape as possible, we then can have water that sticks around longer on our own site, as well as helping people downstream not have too much. So the ancient Chinese had this saying that was, many small dams are better than one big dam. And they weren't really talking about dams the way we think of, like hydroelectric dams. They're talking about slowing down water so that you're not trying to deal with it when it's all in one place, but rather a little bit everywhere. And that, of course, helps keep your water and soil and organic matter in place. So I think I skipped a little too far here. I should be using arrows rather than the keypad. Okay, so just talking a little bit about the story of the place. So many people are here because of the Bexley Habitat Triangle. The Bexley Habitat Triangle is sponsoring this event. So the Bexley Habitat Triangle is between these three streets: Astor Avenue, College Avenue, and Pleasant Ridge. So it's basically these houses in this area. And I just want to, let's see, what I really want to say is that we have a lot more in common than we have, well, we have a lot in common, okay? We live close to Alum Creek. So Alum Creek is a little bit further this way on the map, all the way up into here. But water all flows this direction. So this is the high point, and gradually it flows this direction. But you'll notice with all these curvy lines, like a topographic map, that it's not just a steady slope, right? So you end up having these pockets where you'll have a small ridge right there, and you'll have a small dip right there, right? So this yard is one of the yards in our project, and every yard around it flows into it. So those folks have a lot of water, like more than anybody really wants to have, at least on a rainy day. Flooding, they have a video of flooding. They've contacted the city of Bexley recently because there's a drain there that used to flow all the way over here to help drain that yard. Well, that drain no longer works. So there's a wet pocket right there. But we can help them and work together with them to create abundance by creating things like along these contour lines. A person could do a water catchment that's long along the hillside, like along that same level. And that means you're keeping stuff on your property, your fertility, your water, and it's not all going to one place. Okay, let's see. So this is a little muffin tin. It's Sarah, could you come up here for a moment? This is my wife.
But he never calls me Sarah. So that's why I said aw. It's usually darling or babe.
So could you hold that in front of my face, please? Yeah. All right. Wait, how's this going to work? Okay. All right. So when it rains, a landscape is going to have some unevenness, right? It's not a flat surface. So notice that the water that hits the high points doesn't stick around on those high points, right? It goes to the lower spots, and then it keeps on just flowing off the property eventually. What's left evaporates or infiltrates. But, well, and I'll just say something real quick about those of us who are gardeners have been told for ages, right, that raised beds are great because they warm up well in spring and they drain well in spring. So they're high and dry. Yeah, that's great in spring. Not so great in summer, right? Because raised beds take a lot more water in summer than other spots. So imagine this. Having some places on your property where raised beds are fine, but sunken beds can be helpful too, right? So just turn that muffin tin upside down. So now, when it rains, still same amount of water, but some of that stayed on your property. And that water will now sink in deeply into the landscape because it has a chance to infiltrate. And that trains plant roots to become more drought tolerant because it makes the roots grow deep for their water. Okay? Thank you. That's good for now. We'll come back to this.
But I mean, you don't want
Oh, yes. Thank you. Okay. All right. So then the question becomes, how much rain do we get? Well, these maps give us a pretty good idea. We get roughly, on average, about 39, 40 inches of rain a year in this part of Bexley, Columbus. Okay? Wrong direction. Okay, so this is just a little bit of graphic. So what does that really mean? Like, so what if we get 40 inches? What on earth does that even mean? So yesterday, at my house on Nelson Road, I got roughly an inch of rain. Between the noon rain and the evening rain, it was roughly an inch. An inch is about what I call a good rain, right? Because it's enough that you don't have to go out and water anything in the next few days, right? It's pretty good rain. So we're gonna imagine that the average roof size in South Bexley, where this Bexley Habitat Triangle is, that between garage roof and house roof, the average roof size is about 2,000 square feet. So 2,000 square feet means that in every inch of rain, you would get roughly 1,200 gallons of water, right? And in a year, 50,000 gallons. That 50,000 gallons is enough to fill this room overflowing, okay? That's a lot of water. It collects. So on an acre of Bexley, we're talking about over 1 million gallons of water in a year. That's a lot, 15 million gallons of water. So one of the water problems that people experience is not enough water when you want water, right? My site's too dry, the water leaves too fast, the soil doesn't hold enough water. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that too. Okay, and obviously this is seasonal. It's kind of fun to look at historic records that say July and August, that's a combined 8 inches of rain. Not recently, but for the most part, historically at least, it's fairly evenly distributed. So that's likely to keep coming back around. I believe in global weirding. Our weather is getting weirder, and we never know which extreme we're gonna get. But there are certain cycles in nature that have, like over a 12-year period, you're gonna come back out of drought or you're gonna go back into drought, things like that. So these are slides from a spot in Israel that I visited. This is a mountainside where water harvesting was important. So there's a trickle of water, very, very, very slow trickle that comes out of the mountain. And the people who live there created this well over 1,000 years ago to catch water and then distribute it as they needed it, right? So these are terraced gardens all along the mountain, back and forth and back and forth. And it's believed that these have been continuously gardened for well over 1,000 years. So the reason I put that in here is that one of my permaculture mentors told me many, many years ago that what we want to create are things that will outlive us. We want to have a positive impact on nature to the point where we're not making it worse for nature by being here, but we're making it ideally better, right? So that we're having a positive, lasting impact. Okay, so the way we do that is shaping the soil to hold water. And sometimes the soil's already shaped to hold water, right? So in a neighborhood wet spot, it's the lowest place, so it's already shaped that way. Sometimes all you need to do is remove the sod, mix in a little compost, and put in plants. That's the easiest way to do it, right? If the water is conducive to that, if the soil is conducive to that. Creating a living sponge. So what that looks like is planting densely, mulching deeply, and then that builds organically rich soil. So you want to plant with plants that can tolerate drought because you won't always have that constant moisture. And training your plants to become more drought tolerant by watering them less often, but deeply. It really works. Your plant roots can grow deeper, become more drought tolerant, just by the way you water them. Clearly, this already happens in nature. So low spots dry out quicker, high spots dry out quicker, low spots collect water. Okay, I think I didn't get around to fixing that one. Okay, so this is a property that my former company in Arizona did. The reason this is up here is because the homeowner wanted to win an award. Her friend had won an award with the Arizona Native Plant Society, and she's like, I want to win an award. So she had just retired, and she and her husband decided they wanted to turn their lawn into a water harvesting landscape. So that is primarily native plants. It's at least 80% native plants. But the thing that's really cool about this is that she wanted to do the math. So she had her records from all of her water bills and compared how much water her landscape used before we did this. And then this is the first year after. That's not 5 years after, which would be even better, right? But the first year, okay? In Arizona, Flagstaff, so it's higher elevation, not nearly like Phoenix. But the total domestic water use decreased by 46% during irrigation months. So, it never really occurred to me before, but every tennis court has to drain somewhere. They're not flat. They go very, 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 very slight direction. Most parking lots are sloped one direction or another. Every sidewalk should be sloped a quarter inch per foot, or at least 1/8 of an inch per foot, and so forth. But this tennis court creates erosion, pulls all that organic matter in soil, but you can turn it sideways across the landscape. This is what we would call a contour berm or a contour swale and berm. So if you remember those topographic lines we looked at earlier, like each point along that line is the same elevation. So here, you mark it along that way, you come in with a mini excavator, and you can do this with a shovel, it just takes a lot longer. And basically you remove soil, and then you pile it up downhill to make a berm with it, okay? And then you can plant it, which I don't have a picture here of that spot. But this is Susan's house. This is after we installed the rain garden, but I didn't have a good picture of what the flooding was like in her backyard before we installed it. So I'm just gonna show you. This is roughly what it looked like about 2 weeks after we installed it. So not every rain garden has to have a stone wall, but in her case, she had a lot of water. Everything from the driveway was heading that direction. Everything from the new patio was heading that direction. And it was the lowest spot in her yard. And some of her neighbor's yard goes her direction too. So it needed to be fairly deep, deeper than a typical Ohio rain garden. So that's why it's got the limestone walls. Susan added a fun statue. And we can see that even through the seasons, it catches water and soaks it in. So that's her site in March, right? We had a big rain, and I asked Susan to keep sending me pictures throughout the day, so she showed me pictures of how it was infiltrating. And this one, let's see, no, I removed that picture. I had one picture of what it looked like a day later, basically. It had infiltrated into the ground. So water soaks in more slowly in the wintertime because most of the plants are dormant, right? So in the summertime, if you've got plants around, they're gonna absorb water. Well, okay, so you're gonna have, in any rain catchment situation, you're gonna have infiltration, what goes into the ground. You're gonna have evaporation, which is, what releases into the air. And then you're gonna have transpiration if it's planted. So transpiration is the ability of plants to act like a pump and pull that water up and then let it out through its leaves, okay? So generally speaking, something like this is gonna drain less quickly in the wintertime and early spring than it will in the summer. And this was just planted in August. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what it looks like in June, July, August this year. So this is kind of, okay, so this is what you can do if you notice that you've got a puddle, but that puddle infiltrates quickly. So in this case, this whole road drains into her front yard, but it goes in so quickly that an hour after the rain, you don't see the water anymore. And so in this case, all I really had to do was remove the sod from the top and then mix in compost and then put in plants. That's kind of if you have good drainage, right? Fairly quick drainage. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a percolation test looks like and why that's important so that you can figure out the right plants for the site. But basically, you want to use mulch because it's going to help you create a sponge, okay? Water, okay, I didn't do the second part of the demo, so we're going to have to do that. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that next. So basically, yeah, let's talk about a sponge. And Susan, I might require your help too. Okay. All right. So, and Susan, I'm going to give you that. Okay, so this is a average South Bexley house, okay? Trust me. Okay, so this, yard. These folks are into water conservation, so they've got a couple rain barrels right there by their gutter. But they just heard something about living sponge, and so they're trying to think about, okay, what's that look like? Well, maybe we should try a rain garden. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and flip those over and then water this site. Sorry. Okay, now we're gonna do the arm thing again, okay. All right, thanks everybody for your patience there. All right, so the water is falling and the rain barrels are full. Okay, so it's still raining. Rain barrels are overflowing. Where's that water going now? Okay, well, okay. Let's see how well that sponge works. So let's go ahead and pour these into the measuring cup. And Susan, how did we do?
There's a little tiny bit of water on the bottom. There's not a little tiny bit of water.
It's tough to tell because this is a cup, 2-cup measuring cup, and it doesn't have a red line that goes that far down. But Susan, actually, could you lower that a little bit? But when you do both harvesting in the landscape and in the barrels, then what?
Then there's a measurable amount of
Okay.
water.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So a sponge in the landscape is essentially organic matter, right? It's plants and organic material, which is usually composted dead plants, right? When a tree gets pruned, usually its roots will also lose a little bit of their organic matter. That's just the way most trees work. It's true with grasses, true with a lot of plants, where their roots will also prune when a branch falls off. So that becomes part of the sponge. Over time, a rain garden or backyard wetland can absorb more and more water over time. All right, so to choose a plant or what plants might work, it's really important, the second one, how long does it take the water to infiltrate? How long it takes for it to infiltrate just on grass is not always indicative of what it would do with a rain garden with plants and whatnot in it. But if your spot holds water for a month, you're gonna have to use different plants than if it infiltrates within 3 days, okay? And 3 days is different than 1 day, right? So a rain garden, once it's installed with plants, with organic matter, should infiltrate within about 48 hours. And if it's more than 48 hours, you really should be calling it a backyard wetland or front yard wetland even. But that's the way I look at it is so Ohio has a lot of plants that are adapted to both extremes. So we do have plants that can tolerate the extreme drought and wet spots or wet, long water, but not every plant. There's a slightly different group of plants. They overlap to some degree, right? So a spot that stays wet for 3 days, you would consider that usually a seasonal wetland, right? Because it's gonna dry out at certain times of year. It's probably gonna have a very high clay content. You have to choose your plants a little differently. Okay, so anyway, we have lots of questions when we evaluate a site. One of the most important is how long it takes to infiltrate. So the way you figure that out is you do a percolation test. So you dig a hole, use a regular shovel, you dig about the depth of a shovel blade and about the width of a shovel. You fill it up with water, you let it infiltrate. After it infiltrates, you fill it a second time, and then you time how long it takes it to infiltrate the second time, okay? If it's less than 24 hours, then that's good, okay? If it infiltrates within an hour, well, then I'd say you have what they call a dry rain garden, right? It percolates quickly. That's what I have at my house. My rain gardens are dry. And dry rain gardens work too, because the water soaks in, and then that trains the roots to grow deep for their water. I only watered my rain garden like 3 times all last summer, and it was only the second year that it was in place. Okay, and then you want to choose plants that are good looking, right? You don't want to be the neighbor that everybody else is pointing at and talking about. So some great species for these kinds of things. This is a rose mallow, so it's one of our native hibiscus plants. It gets big flowers like, I don't know, roughly the size of my fist, my hand, or my palm. There's a white and red species and a species that blooms pink. There's blue flag iris there. You don't want to do white flag iris. That's a non-native, but the blue flag iris tolerates wet and then dry. And then there's swamp milkweed in there. I showed a picture of like a contour swale and berm. That's what this is. This is a mini contour swale and berm. This part is low, and then this part is high. This is the berm downstream of it. So we planted fragrant sumac there, red buckeye, which Bexley has quite a few of. And we have Monarda, we have, we have a lot of columbine coming up. I was just there a couple days ago. It's really nice. It's filling in really nicely. And then keystone species. So we want to lean on some of the powerhouse species and families that really make a difference for these kind of critters. So this is a Cecropia moth. I like to raise caterpillars at home. I get fascinated by it. And so I like to make sure I have plants that they're attracted to. So every time I'm thinking about a landscape, I'm always looking at what kind of insects are going to want to live here, right? And so some of the species, some of the plants that are good for caterpillars, so another thing about caterpillars. So birds love caterpillars. So birds, the primary food of most young birds, I don't know about most, that may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but a lot of young birds live on caterpillars. They need lots and lots of caterpillars. And so so when I think about a landscape for wildlife, I'm not just thinking about pollinators, but I'm usually not trying to attract deer either. I'm trying to attract a group of wildlife that I think of as building blocks for the rest of our ecosystem, right? So the things that birds are going to want to eat, and because they're the building blocks. Okay. So I have a friend, Kevin Clark. He's kind of my caterpillar mentor. He likes to say that everyone should have a hop tree and a button bush because these guys attract some of the coolest caterpillars and moths. But button bush is fantastic for any wet spot. If it's wet for a day, great. If it's wet for a week, great. If it's wet for 3 weeks, a month, doesn't matter. Button bush can take the depth, even if it's like up to its belly, it can take it. And then in the summertime, it's drought tolerant. So for shrubs, it's a lot easier. They're more adaptable. Oaks, prunus species in general, including black cherry, American plum, milkweed species. So swamp milkweed, purple milkweed, butterfly milkweed, poke milkweed. There's many that work. There's a native milkweed for every niche. If you've got dry sun, you can do it. If you've got a wet sun, you can do it. If you've got dry shade, you can do it. There's a milkweed for each one of those. Native goldenrods, native asters. Let's see. I do recommend straight species. Generally better for wildlife than hybrids and name varieties. Just another picture of shaping the soil. This isn't the best picture, but I was trying to show this driveway. Water flows down the driveway, and we're working to catch it in the landscape. So this is a contour swale and berm. and this is another one up here. So, and then just planted these with bare root plants. Just recently, we did a native seeding over the winter. Got it started late fall, so a little late, but then we did bare root trees and shrubs from Franklin Soil and Water. About 100 plants in there, 100 trees and shrubs. This doesn't look like a great slide, so oh well. But this is that site I showed you first, the introductory slide. This is the backyard that was collecting water all over. They had just installed a French drain a year before, but it wasn't what they wanted to do. They wanted to do habitat. They just hadn't found somebody who could help them make that happen. So we did this after French drains were put in. So most of the water comes in from this side, and then it overflows into another. So we had a series of earthworks, right? So in this case, we would use a mini excavator. So a small earth-moving equipment that's a lot of fun, relatively small. You can get them between a gate of 4 feet or less, depending on the size you get. They're really wonderful tools, and you can rent them fairly inexpensively from Murray's Tool Rental. I love them. And then you end up with nice habitat. So some of you are familiar with soft landings. I don't have another soft landing picture in this slideshow, so I'm just going to mention that soft landings are basically, it means having living plants in the understory underneath native trees, okay? Some caterpillar species, like the hickory horndevil, for those guys, they're the biggest caterpillar in our region. They like walnut, and they look like a Chinese dragon. They eat walnut and hickory. Anyway, after they've eaten their fill of leaves, they drop to the ground, and they try to dig into the ground so that they can complete their life cycle. They cannot reproduce unless they can get into the soil. But at the time of year when they come out and they're looking for a home, the ground around a mowed area around a tree is too hard for them to get in most years. And so a soft landing is basically a big space underneath this mature oak, right? Where basically there's a shrub there, there's a bunch of shrubs, there's grasses, there's sedges, there's all different kinds of flowering plants to help keep the ground soft and pliable. So rainwater storage. So I guess here I just want to say people get creative when it comes to rainwater. When you're first starting, it might just look like buckets, right? My first rain barrel was a trash can. Not the best model. It caught a rat kind of quick. But anyway, you can do a trash can well, but the first things you learn are that you have to have them covered, and you have to keep mosquitoes out. You have to keep critters like rats out. So rain barrels are fantastic, and I support them all the way. One thing you'll notice, if we, in a year where, like our averages, we saw those averages where it was fairly even distribution throughout the year. In a year like that, a rain barrel or a few rain barrels is great because you always have a little bit of rain coming in, right? But in some years, when you have a drought, people sometimes appreciate a larger tank. So those are possible too, especially if you have a large garden or a space or a lot of plants that need irrigation. Then notice that on this is a large water tank. The 50-gallon level that's in a standard rain garden or rain barrel is down here. So depends on what your goal is, really. So these are just some different styles of rain harvesting. in Columbus and Bexley, we have a lot of luxuries. We have easy access to running water. We have easy access to a lot of things. So a lot of us don't need rain barrels like this. But I just want to point out that if you don't like the look of a plastic rain barrel, you can put wood around it. You can give it a lid. You can decorate it. You can paint it. There's a lot of different things you can do. You can put shrubs around it. This gentleman asked about water or wintertime protection. So this is Arizona based. And I'm just saying that because in Arizona, you can go 7 months without any water at all, any rain at all. And so we relied on winter precipitation for a dry spring, right? And so there, we would not drain our tanks. People with small rain barrels would, but in a tank like this, that water doesn't freeze, even in a cold climate like Flagstaff. But you have to build up around any small pipes, right, where the water comes out. And so you can freeze protect systems, but that's a lot of effort for 50 gallons of rain. So it all depends on what you're going for. You can do fun things like have your rain go into a tank and then overflow into a rainwater pond and then overflow into your landscape. You always want to plan for an overflow. Overflows on some tanks, it's kind of interesting on some rain barrels. I saw one the other day at Oakland Nursery where the overflow was about a 1-inch pipe. Well, you've got a bigger volume than that coming in. So ideally, just in principle, your overflow should be equal to or greater than the size of your incoming water. You want to keep sunlight and mosquitoes out. Freeze protection, there are reusable materials. I wanted to put in a picture of my rain tank at home. Didn't get around to that, so I'd be happy to share a slide of that if anybody wants it. Just let me know. Okay, and I think that's a good place to stop. I will say that if you're interested, there's a little sign-up sheet for people who want more information or would want to connect with me in one way or another. There's also business cards back there and a few photos of things that we've done. So, questions? Yes?
In terms of sponges, wet spots, et cetera, that you both mentioned in your presentations, how far from the foundation do you want to be?
Okay.
Because a lot of us have water pressure pushing on our basement walls.
Yeah, that's a big issue. So I like to have, and it depends. It really, ideally, any place you're collecting water should be 10 feet away from your foundation, okay? It's not always possible to do that. Depending on your soil, 6 feet can be enough if it drains quickly, right? I was at a property in the habitat triangle the other day where a person was telling me that their pipe no longer drains. So they did have a drain pipe that was leading their downspout water towards the street, but it no longer gets there. And so it's wet near the foundation. And as we looked at it, it's like, oh, well, actually, it's going downhill faster that way than this way. So really, an ideal would be to put in a new pipe that goes the other direction, and oh, look at that. You could do a rain garden there now that's now further away from the house. So you've got the water away from the house, but you've also created this solution where now you have a place where you can put in plants that you couldn't do otherwise. Okay. Any other questions?
Our backyard is, it gets so much water. I mean, we call it like a bog. And I just thought that was just the way it is. So you're saying we could do something with that area to kind of transform it into something productive and instead of just a moat? Like it's really bad.
Okay, so let me ask this. Is it seasonal?
Yes. So I would say after the winter with the rain. And we also get a lot of water in our basement on occasion.
Okay.
So we've definitely had some issues.
Right. Well, you probably have high clay content. Your perk test would probably be a slow drain. So Ohio is kind of, Ohio is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. We are on the edge of the Appalachian Plateau, right? So we have access to all of the plants that are beautiful and wonderful in the entire Appalachian foothills, right? It's a tremendous treasure trove, like one of the most temperate climate ecosystems in the world. Plus, we're on the edge of prairie, and we're on the edge of the other woodland areas. So we've got multiple woodland types kind of merging in central Ohio. We have so many plants. And at least 90% of Ohio's wetlands have been drained or filled, right? And so the animals and the plants that depend on that kind of soil moisture are very much threatened and endangered. And so, yes, there are things you can do. There are definitely things you can do to get water away from the foundation. And when you do that, you always have to send it somewhere, right? And so part of the idea is to catch, store, and utilize water as high in the landscape as possible so that not all of the water goes to one place, right? So if you can catch some of that water higher in the landscape, then you have less in the boggy spot. But there are also plants that really rely on the boggy spot. So there are things you can do, yes.
We have a big variety of native plants, but the backyard is just a mess. It's just another story. So,
okay.
And the kids have dug trenches. So I mean, it's a jungle. It's literally it's a mess.
If I were a smart business person, I would stick to mowing. I would do the easy thing that gets me the biggest bang for the buck, and I can just go home and then relax. But that's not the way I live. I live to be of service, and I like challenges like that, because that's the kind of thing that gets me excited, right? Because that's habitat for your cecropias and your luna moths and your Polyphemus. You can do so much in wetter spots, so much. I have a dry spot, so I salivate every time I get to plant a spot that's gets that extra moisture. I get excited about it. So I do offer consultations. There's a sign-up sheet if you're interested in that. Somebody who signs up on there is going to get a free 1-hour consultation. Okay.
Well, if that's it, the library is closed currently. So if you need, you can exit through these stairs up here. But if you do need the elevator, just get me and I can let you out the front door. Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everybody.